Good afternoon, YouTube. You know, I've always wondered why people say, or scholars and experts and linguists say that the Phoenician alphabet, which is what the Hebrew language is written in, and other early languages such as the Moabite language, they all look the same. The letters were the same. And I've often wondered why they always say there's no vowels. It's curious to me, because for certain letters, like Aleph and Ayin, the Yod, and even the Vav, or the Vav, depending on how you would like to pronounce that. In case you're Yiddish and hung out in Germany for 1,000 or 2,000 years and can't say a W anymore because they use V's instead of W's. Why they always said there was no vowels. If you see a Aleph or if you see a Yin, a lot of times if you see the Yod or the Wav or Vav, you know it's a vowel. It's not a consonant. The Ayin or the Aleph is never a P or a Q or an H or W or T. It's always an E, A, I, O, or U. So why do they always say there's no vowels, or they didn't write vowels, when they specifically put those particular symbols in the words, and they were always vowels? They were never consonants, and to this day they are not consonants. And they are in the oldest writing. There's always an Aleph, whether it's Egyptian, Phoenician, Aramaic, or Greek, who copied the Phoenician alphabet also, because the Greeks had a lot of dealings, had dealings with the Mesopotamians and the Asia Minor area and the Egyptians than they did with Northern Europe. They didn't have too many dealings with them. They hung out in India and places like that, and everybody there was using a version of the Phoenician alphabet. Now, the Phoenician alphabet, of course, Phoenicians are Canaanites, was used by the Israelites, and that's no big deal. They used it because it was better than Egyptian writing. Maybe people didn't want to hire artists because you need to draw a crocodile. You need to draw feet, you know. Using the lines for symbolism was much easier, and you didn't have to worry about running out of paint. You let the kids play with the paint. And so it was not that big of a deal that everyone was using. Basically, it's Canaanite, or Ugarit, as they call it, which were proto-Canaanites, like Syria, the Levant, and Tyre, and all of that. So it wasn't really until they used it all the way up until Hezekiah's time, when people still spoke Hebrew and had Hebrew pronunciations for things. And they used this alphabet up until the Babylonian exile. And the letters remain the same, but a little variance on the symbols. And also dialect, because you're starting to see the he or the H just on the ends of words, whereas when they found Hezekiah's signet ring, you don't see H's on the end of anything. Like even the Tetragrammaton is only three letters. It's not 4. There's no final H. And for Judah, there's no H. There's no he on the end. But that is the Aramaic. And the Aramaics the Babylonians, of course, they developed it a little bit further. And by the time the people got back from the Babylonian exile, they couldn't speak Hebrew anymore. They only spoke Aramaic, which is similar, but of course you're going to have the dialect differences. Like, say you're going to say E's instead of A's. And that happens, that's just dialect. That's like the difference between a Texas accent and a Massachusetts accent in English. You know, Massachusetts, they say water. The R's disappear. In Texas, they got draws, or water. You know, they have a draw. So the word might be written the same, but the way it's pronounced is different. And that just happens to be a dialect of region. So let's say you have the Hebrew pronunciation for Judah, which is Yahuda. And then you have the Aramaic pronunciation, which is Yehuda. So you have that E in there instead of the A, but that's just regional. It's still spelled the same. And now, of course, because of the use of, when they came back with the Aramaic, they used the imperial Babylonian script. So now you're coming back and you have H's on the end of things, because apparently they pronounce the H, the Yahudah, the H at the end. Whereas the Hebrew, it's just Yahudah, no H, final H at the end. And that's just dialect. But the case in point I'm making is there are vowels. To say that Aleph, which has always been in the alphabet, Ayin, which means eye, Aleph, of course, means ox, and Ayin means eye, and it actually originally looked like the eye of Ra, or what we consider the eye of Ra. And even today, it still looks like that. If you take and circle it in, or close in the open end, it looks like an eye. But that just stood for eye, the word eye. Because that's how ancient people wrote. They wrote in symbols. Initially, symbols that looked like the idea they were sharing. That's called writing. Because writing is nothing but written sounds. That's all it is. But they did have vowels. And I don't know why to this day they said that they don't. There's no vowels. The Masoretes or whatever, the Masoretes, whatever you call those people, 1,000 years later, added vowels. I said, no, they did not. There's already vowels, and we know they're vowels, because anytime you see them, you know it's not a consonant. And they represent a vowel. And that's my thoughts on that. Have a good day.